You can't tell Elvis' story without that. We don't have Elvis without black music and black culture.
Tomorrow, all of America will be talking about my war.
Who the hell is that?
Crying all the time.
Elvis Presley.
You ain't nothing but a...
You don't do the business will do you.
It's not possible to tell the story of Elvis Presley without dealing with the issue of his relationship to black music, black culture, and in particular the issue of race. I mean, if there was no anti-desegregation in the South, then Elvis' association with black artists like B.B. King, his going to WDI, the radio show, him breaking the segregation laws, right? There wouldn't have been a controversy. There wouldn't have been this explosion. There wouldn't have been a need to have him go to the army, cut his hair, and turn him into a nice, clean Hollywood star. Now, the fact that that happened to him and he didn't really realize it, and then when he does realize it, we have the comeback special, and we think, wow, he's finally come back to Memphis. He's finally going to reconnect. I mean, he and James Brown were going to do an album together. There's a reason why James Brown has a song where he begins, "This is a song for my brother Elvis," you know? But the Colonel was really, really focused on making sure that that was disconnected. And so there's no choice in telling the story of Elvis Presley. There's not a choice. You can't do it without dealing with his relationship to black America.
Some people wanted to put me in jail the way I was moving.
They might put me in jail for walking across the street, but you're a famous white boy.
That's my first question, actually, when they were saying they were going to include B.B. King. I was like, well, are we going to talk about that? And I also was like, and then what is the conversation around it? How are we going to say it? Were they actually friends? Are we going to use B.B. just to defend Elvis if that's not the case? What's the truth? So we did a little investigation before we signed on, and then once we found out it was, B.B. really was a real advocate of Elvis, and he loved him, and they were friends. And then I got really excited to dive into that story and discover some of those nuances and develop that with Austin and Baz. So that was the start.
I hope this movie is very informative to the entire audience, and that I hope we all go back and do our research like we did when we got assigned these roles and really discover where it all came from. And most importantly, I hope people of color dive deeper into ownership and protect that and cherish that, because we are the blueprint. We are the people that have opened these doors and paved the way for the next to come. So
you can't tell Elvis' story without that. We don't have Elvis without black music and black culture. His style, walking down Beale Street and him saying, wow, that's one of the coolest guys I've ever seen. Where did he get his suit? And I mean, that impacts the way that he dresses. That impacts his sanctuary was going down to Beale Street and getting to, that's the place where I feel he felt the most pure in a way. Where he touched into his inspiration, being in gospel churches as a little kid when he's back in Tupelo, and seeing juke joints and the whole combination of the sacred and the profane that is the juke joint and the gospel church, all of that. And I'm so proud of the fact that we get to be a part of this film that puts his life in context, specifically around that, because credit needs to be given where credit is due. And he, there's that scene in the film where you see him in Club Handy saying, I'd love to record one of Little Richard's songs. And B.B. King says, if you do, you'll make a whole lot more money than that kid could ever dream of. And to see that hit Elvis and the realization of the disparity there and the unfairness. So I'm glad that you can't tell the story without it, and I'm glad we get to be a part of that.
Everything comes from these underground places, Even when you look at, these big artists like Beyonce, she's pulling from these like smaller, interesting niche artists that are from like Switzerland or someone random or parts of Africa, and she's inspired by them, and then she develops into something using her platform. And I think the misconception is that these smaller artists are sometimes upset that they've stolen these things, and you know, people want their money. Sometimes they don't, you know, whatever it is. But I think if we look at it from the point of view of like it's to be inspired by, that's what a beautiful thing, and to share that with a larger audience. That's the whole point of art. When we get into art and commerce, that's a whole different conversation. I think that's where people get confused, you know? We want to start to make money off of certain things, and I don't know.
I think to play Sister Rosetta, who invented rock and roll, and to show her holding court and the scene that we're in, it's her night, and she's the elder, and Elvis and BB and Little Richard are the youngest, and she discovered Little Richard. All of this, the idea that you can be that as from a young black girl standpoint, is a really important thing to go. You can be the architect of your own destiny.
I think that, you know, he pushed the boundaries of what was acceptable, and he trailblazed, you know, into a new arena of rock and roll and music. I also think that I hope that the audience is also reminded of where his music came from. He was heavily, heavily influenced by black culture and heavily influenced by black musicians like B.B. King and Little Richard and Big Mama Thornton. And I hope that those incredible artists are reintroduced to the narrative that they should have been in the first place.
This ain't no nostalgia show. We're gonna do something different.